Okay, so as I was looking for topics, I came across this website that had a petition set up on their website. The website was called forcechange.com. And like one of the number one petitions that people were like either for or against was whether the drinking age should be lowered. So I've heard a lot, I'm sure most people have heard a lot about how, like in passing, some people talk about it, but it's kind of starting to come up as a real issue right now. And so that's why I decided to talk about this topic. So today I wanted to highlight to you the specific reasons why the drinking age should not be lowered. Being 21, or being under 21 myself, I could see why a lot of people would want the drinking age to be lowered, but it causes more problems than we can handle. And so as college students, this all relates to us because some of us are either 21 or about to be 21, and so if you're under 21 and this policy were to pass in the next couple of years, then it could affect you in your life. So I'm sure everyone knows someone that has had a drink or two being under the age of 21, but just because you've seen that is not a reason to decide like, oh, you know, they should be able, they're mature enough and they can handle it. They should be able to drink at the age of 19 or 20. So in California, especially, we drive everywhere. And so it's no surprise that we're obsessed with our cars. And that's not a bad thing, but when you add drinking to that mix, it causes a lot of problems. And so according to the Alcohol Policy Information System, annually about 5,000 youth under age 21 die from motor vehicle crashes, other unintentional injuries, homicides, and suicides that involve underage drinking. So if the drinking age were lowered to 18, and most people get their license at 16, like as soon as they turn 16, they get their license. So that creates like a whole like new group of people that would be able to drink and drive, and like legally, and it would just cause more DUIs, more accidents, more fatalities. And according to the American Medical Association, in the 1970s, the drinking age was lowered to 18 because 18-year-olds were given other rights like voting, and so they decided to lower the drinking age. During that time, the number one cause of teenagers was motor vehicle accidents that included alcohol. So after they had so many deaths and so many accidents, they decided to raise the minimum drinking age to 21 throughout the states, and that decreased accidents dramatically. And according to SAD, which is Students Against Drunk Driving, the age group of 16 to 20-year-olds has the greatest percentage of distracted drivers. And so obviously if they're distracted by just being on their phone or talking to their friends and doing other stuff, if they were to legally be able to drink, by having a couple of drinks, like that would just increase their distractedness, and that wouldn't be a good thing. There's also a questionnaire by high school students where they were asked within like the last 30 days if they had ever driven with someone that was under the age and also like intoxicated, and the results were that like 28.5% of them had said yes, they had driven with someone that was drinking and was also under the age. Now, Europe has a drinking age of 18 in most parts, and people always say that like though they are allowed to drink at 18, you know, they don't have these drunk driving accidents and all stuff like that. Well, in most parts of Europe, you have to be 18 to get a license, and even sometimes, you know, most people don't get licenses at 18 right away. And they may be walking a lot of places. Like we drive everywhere. Like a lot of places in Europe, you walk down the street. So obviously your drinking and driving accidents are going to be a lot lower because you're not driving half the time. And so another reason that the drinking age should remain at 21 is that young adults' brains are not completely developed. They don't really fully develop until the age of about 25. In the Journal of Psychology of Addictive Behaviors, Dr. Susan Tappert from the University of California, San Diego, did a study on 12 to 14-year-olds and studied their brains before they had even tried any alcohol. And then followed them through a couple years as some of them started to drink, and especially like at the age like 16 started to binge drink, which is very common. It's just like 5 or 6 drinks in like one sitting. So she found that, and then after she did that, she compared the people that had been drinking at about 16, 17 to the people that had not drank at all still. And she found that when she did tests on them of memory and thinking and planning, they did more poorly on those tests than the people that had not drank. She also found that girls did poorly, girls that engaged in binge drinking did poorly on spatial functioning, which is like a lot of math classes and engineering classes. They have a lot of spatial functioning that you need to use. And so they did poorly on that, and boys did more poorly on tests of attention. So binge drinking also damages the white matter of your brain, which it causes the brains in your cells to work poorly and become less than effective. And also drinking at such a young age causes damage to your frontal lobe, which is responsible for like your decision making and your planning and stuff like that. And that's kind of why at the age of 16, when your frontal lobe is not completely developed, boys especially will get into some risky behaviors and kind of do some stupid stuff. And so when you add alcohol to that, and it kind of delays the development of that area, it's not a good mix. And so another obvious reason why the drinking age should not be lowered is to keep alcohol out of the hands of young adults. And it's no secret that if you're under 21, it's still pretty easy to get alcohol. But that's not a reason that you should lower the drinking age, just because even if you're 18, like, yeah, I can still get alcohol, but you shouldn't be able to. Obviously, there's ways around the system. So James C. Fell, from a senior program director of alcohol policy and safety research team, claims that he has done many researches on like topics of underage drinking, and his research shows that kids are drinking less at younger ages, and they're also continuing to drink less by the time they get to 21, 22. So there's always kind of that myth that like everyone drinks at like 16 or 18, but the research shows that that's not really true. And lowering the drinking age, a lot of people think will be a good reason, because then it will be less desirable. It won't be as desirable because it's something that like they're not allowed to have. So it's like a rebellion kind of thing, the forbidden fruit thing. But research also shows that that's not really true. Like history has shown that by lowering the drinking age, it doesn't really stop people from drinking a lot or drinking excessively and like drinking as soon as they can. So underage drinking is kind of a serious problem, and we don't really have solutions. Like by lowering the drinking age, we wouldn't be able to cope with the problems and really find solutions to solve the problem like at this point. And so the drinking age should not be lowered, because it would cause more drunk driving, accidents and fatalities and deaths, and no one wants that. Also, young adults' brains are not fully developed. No one wants that. And it keeps alcohol from the hands of young adults. So eventually, this may be put up to a vote of whether the drinking age should remain the same or should be lowered. And so I just hope that everyone remembers the reasons why it should not be lowered, and also never drink and drive.
6 seconds left.
No way. That was like
Timing. There you go.
And for like the first 5 minutes, I couldn't see I was looking down when you flipped the cards. I'm like, I don't even know what to do on that.
Koki, what did you think?
I think she did really well. She stated her thesis really well. She was right on to the point where she gave us a little preview of what she was talking about. But I did notice that, she was interrupted twice, which really sucks because we kind of got distracted with somebody saying a comment and then the phone going off. And I think on the second time you got interrupted, you kind of got frustrated. You kind of saw with your hands, you were kind of a little oh, shut up, I'm talking, So, yeah, I understand it gets really hard because you got kind of confused and you lost your train of thought and everything. But besides that, I think you did really well with everything, explaining everything, giving your reasons. So I think it was a pretty good speech.
All right. I like the idea that you came across the petition site, and that's kind of your justification for talking about this, that there are people who are doing this. You build up a need, in essence, a suggestion that people are actually thinking about this and that it's something that people in this age group might be concerned with, so it's a good reason to be talking about it. I thought you did a very nice job on that. I do think that you need to lay out the structure a little bit more, so there's not as much of a preview as I would normally want to have, but internally the signposting is very clear, so I always know when you're moving from one point to an next, and I know what point you're on at that point, so that helps really well. The research in the speech was excellent. You've got a lot of information. You cite the sources very consistently on this, and you connect it to the arguments that you're making. I thought that at the end, for instance, you do talk about the forbidden fruit issue, and you make the suggestion, research shows it isn't really true. Actually, it's the experience that shows this, and you talked about that experience early on, what happened back in the 1970s when they did lower the drinking age. So I thought that there is information in your speech that addresses almost all of the points that you're talking about. You're not making an assertion without backing it up in some way, and I thought that was very consistent and solid. The one place that I thought may be a little bit lacking is the idea of making some emotional appeals to the audience. You kind of share with the audience the idea, well, none of us wants that, but you want to give us kind of an emotional reason why we don't want those kinds of things. You mentioned at one point, for instance, how teenage boys drink and make bad emotional decisions. That would have been a good spot for one of those kinds of examples of emotional decisions. And it doesn't necessarily have to be death and dismemberment. It could be, early parenthood. It could be somebody flunking out of school. It could be a bad choice that somebody made involved in a crime or something along those lines. Plus, of course, there's always the death and dismemberment examples that you can throw in as well. But I think that you need to have a little bit more of that emotional appeal in the presentation. It's a good argument. It needs to be a little bit more personal and emotional in being persuasive in nature. All right, I'm gonna. I know everybody hates me when I do these things because I hear people make comments. I know, So I apologize for this. You're gonna hit yourself when you do it later. Spatial is the word.
What did I say?
Spatial.
Oh, God. I knew that was the word, but when I saw it on my thing, I'm like,
what?
Yeah.
Yes, it's spatial, and I know it's sometimes you just look at it and that's the way it looks, and so you're going to say it that way. But it was one thing that really kind of took me out of what you were saying. All right, thank you.